let me, I'm just going to throw, I've got 5 questions, and I just want you guys to just come on in however you want. But the first one is, I don't think this is an attack because of some stupid film. I don't buy that for a second. What this is a coordinated attack on our Constitution and freedom of speech. I think this goes back to the Muslim Brotherhood directive of the project of saying, get international laws to be passed so no one can say anything bad about Islam, because then we choke them to death. Anybody believe in that?
I would like to take it one step further. I think that...
Wow. Okay.
Well, I think to understand that the Muslim Brotherhood for about 20 years has been working in parallel with an organization called the Organization Islamic Conference, which is now the Organization Islamic Cooperation, and it represents all the Islamic states at the head of state level. And in 2005, they passed something called the 10-year program of action that they called for making it illegal to violate Islamic slander law everywhere in the world, including the United States. When you see the Muslim Brotherhood engaged in this activity, they're actually implementing it in furtherance of actual state power. So, for example, what happened is the IIIT, the International Institute of Islamic Thought, in the late 80s created a term. They saw how well the word homophobia worked, and they coined the term Islamophobia to work for just that reason. And then what they did is they basically treated it like a brand. Actually, they gave it to the OIC, who treats it as a brand. You can go on Google and you can find every year the OIC, that's an entity that represents heads of states of 57 member states, okay, and you can see that they're saying, here's how we're going to get people to respond to it. Now, what you see in parallel, you see something in triplicate, really. When the Muslim Brotherhood is governing a country that is a member of the OIC, you see a complete synchronicity between what the Muslim Brotherhood, the agenda is, and the OIC agenda is. And so what happens is when you see the 10-year program of action, in our world, the term you see is Islamophobia. But taking it one step further, you find that inside the government that they have created a term called violent extremism, and then the countering and the violent extremist narrative. And who helped DHS create this narrative? It was the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right. The movie. Anything on the movie that comes up?
You know, look, I think this is, I think you're exactly right about the movie. I mean, the agenda of trying to free the blind sheikh comes up at least as much as the movie does. In fact, Zawahiri...
Which I think our president will do. I think he'll use a crisis like this to say, we're going to make peace, we'll release a blind sheikh. Disagree?
No, I think in that 10-week period, certainly between the election and the inauguration, no matter who wins, I think there's a very real possibility Obama will do that.
George Soros involved, does this have his, I mean, I thought about this morning, that piece that you did for us almost a year ago now, and I remembered those stages of overthrowing a government, and we're there. While it's not exactly the way it always happens, this seems to me to be the beginning of some sort of crisis that does not lead to any place good.
Well, I would agree. I mean, it seems to me that the whole Arab Spring process, as you pointed out, it follows the pattern of the color revolutions that we've seen all over the world. And, of course, Mr. Soros is not solely responsible for these global activities. He works with governments. He works with intelligence agencies, including our own. And I think it's very important to understand that, because when the Arab Spring happened, you know, it wasn't clear. You know, it wasn't as if all conservatives were against it or all leftists were for it. People didn't know what to think in large part, and because it was about democracy and so forth, and our own government was supporting it. And not just the politicians in the Obama administration, but the so-called permanent government, the bureaucracies, you know, the State Department, the CIA, and so forth, and the think tanks. So Soros is part of that network. He's an integral part of it, and he's a valuable part of it. But it's really our own governments. And more than our government, I think, in this case in North Africa, this is really the sphere of influence of the European Union. At least the Europeans see it that way. And it's interesting to me that Mr. Soros, back in 2007, formed a group in Europe called the European Council on Foreign Relations. And he announced at that time that he was doing this because he was giving up on the United States. He said the U.S. can no longer provide world leadership for all these reasons, he thinks, and he believes the EU is now the power of the future. And if you look at that organization, they're all European heads of states, all the top of the heap, who are with him in that. And I believe that it's really the EU that is doing this Arab Spring movement. It's part of their neo-colonial policy.
Danny, do you believe that Iran is involved? And a follow-up question, what I said in the opening monologue about if I had a friend who everybody was trying to set me on fire all the way around, and I was in my moment of crisis, and my friend said, I'm busy, I got to go on David Letterman, I don't think I would consider them a friend.
Glenn, we live in a very tough neighborhood. And you forgot about 9/11. And I think this morning when you wake up and you see the pictures, you ask why. Don't ask why. There is no reasoning. When you deal with the Muslim radical forces, don't ask for logic. And yes, what we see President Obama making all the mistakes. He went in 2009, in June, to Cairo. He gave a very long speech. He reached his hands to the Arab world. People saw it as a weakness. And today we, in Israel, are paying for that weakness, and you are starting to pay for that. And when we look at Iran becoming nuclear, and we know we have to act, it can be today, tomorrow, in 4 months, and we want to ask President Obama, what is your plans? What do you want to do with that? He's telling our Prime Minister, I cannot meet you. I think he's afraid from the meeting, because Prime Minister Netanyahu will ask him, until when you want us to wait? You're telling us, hold your horses, but until when? What are you going to do?
I'm going to go a step further, because I know you won't. I think President Obama despises Benjamin Netanyahu. You can watch it in his body language. I think he has a real problem with the state of Israel. I think he has the same kind of colonialism against anti-colonialist viewpoint against Great Britain. I mean,
Glenn, there was an open mic when President Obama was in France.
Mm-hmm.
And he said things, and we heard it in Israel, we heard it in Jerusalem. But the interest of the United States of America are much stronger than whether he likes Prime Minister Netanyahu or he doesn't like him. And today, the only ally of the United States in America, the only embassy today you don't have alert is the embassy in Tel Aviv. We don't feel like partners. We are in the same boat, but we have no one fighting with us against Iran. And I know that the American people are with us. Some people telling me, don't worry, the American people support you. But people in the White House decided to ignore. But when you ignore something evil like that, it is coming to your shores.